Hello, welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. Here we are in week 3 of our Monty Python month, kicking off 2021. I am one of your hosts. I am Casey Biggest and Dickus Kelderman. With me, as always, is my co-host and the namesake to this podcast, I do believe, because his name is Mr. Brian Mensing, and he is also a very naughty boy.
I was about to ask exactly what my nickname was going to be, but I'll take that one too.
You don't need a nickname. Your name's in the title of the movie we're talking about.
So we're talking about me.
We're talking about you.
It's going to be a very boring podcast if we're talking about me.
This is like the segment on old school WWF. The Rock, This Is Your Life. This is Brian's This Is Your Life. No one understood the reference I just threw out there. That's okay. Let's move on to this week's guest.
We're nerds, not like you, though.
I know. I understand that. This week's guest, we are joined by the group that does a comic book look. John, Tom, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Totally. Super stoked to be on. We love movies. We love comics. So we're totally excited to get away from comics a little bit and talk films, man. So thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
I see that Tom even prepped for this and outlined his back behind him there.
I know. I'm a little jealous.
I just now noticed RoboCop and whatnot.
I'm jealous of the Toxic Avenger VHS right behind you.
Yeah, I mean, I was a VHS. So as you guys may not know, your listeners, me and John, we collect comics and we read comics every single Wednesday as they come out at Rainbow Comics here in Sioux Falls. And we pick them up, and then we talk about storylines. And so I am a collector by nature. I collect new things every single Wednesday. And so for a long time, I had a very, very large VHS collection alongside with my comics collection, and I actually downsized and got rid of like over 1,000 VHS because it was taking up so much room in my house, and I've regretted it ever since. So I kept on to some of my gems, and I displayed just a couple of them behind me.
And here I am still buying VHS tapes as we're talking today. I just bought a handful of VHS tapes. Why not? Why not?
Who knows? Maybe some of them are Tom's.
That exactly. Could be. I mean, one of them is one we're talking about next week. So there we go. But yeah, let's talk a little bit before we get into like the news and box office. Let's talk a little bit about your guys' show. You mentioned you guys talk comic books. Where can people find it? What is it? What do you guys do?
I'll let John take this over. I mean, he's the best at this kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, we just within the past year are proudly sponsored by Rainbow Comics and Collectibles here in Sioux Falls. So very exciting partnership there. So now when we stream, we actually go directly through the Rainbow page, which is a lot of fun. And we can be found online. You can just search a comic book look all together. You can find us online on the Twitters at @ a comic book look or @ John and Demand, like you see in my name there, @ Tom Stew Divine for Mr. Tom over there. We love reviewing comics. We are very opinionated. The entire premise of the show, Tom and I used to work for a prominent financial institution in town, and we would used to argue about comics that I would like versus what Tom would like. And it was the funniest thing ever. And we were like, why don't we do a show about this? And so that's how it started. And what was it, Tom, like 10 years ago? So,
yeah, 10. Yeah, this is our decade mark. So we've been doing it a long time. This is my partner for life, Johnny Boy.
So it's been a really cool ride that we've met a lot of cool people along the way. So
I think what they're trying to say is we're still babies in all of this.
That we are. I was just about to say Rainbow Comics has filled my about 95% of my office has come from that store. So yeah, I love Rainbow Comics. They're one of my favorite stores to go to. So
at one point for me, they were my Wednesday get up for a long time.
That's excellent to hear. I'm happy to be among fellow nerds of the 605.
We are glad to have you guys on. You know what? You said, you guys are going to step away from comic books. I'm not going to let you guys get off with that because we have some comic book news and I want your guys' expertise on that.
It's almost like it's a perfect time for them to be on for this.
It is a perfect time. But before we get to the news, let's jump to the box office results. These are some strange looking box office results for this week. Coming in at number 1, he's back in the box office, baby. Liam Neeson's back with The Marksman, $3.23 million. Number 1 spot for Mr. Liam's Neeson's.
Liam's Neeson's Taken 49.
Taken in the South.
All you need is Liam Neeson, a very threatening, quick, action-packed trailer, and people will come and see it. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Qui-Gon.
Hey, just think, that was like the resurgence, the bringing us of Liam Neeson. We've never looked back since.
Man, that was the birth of action star Liam Neeson right there. Ugh.
No, I don't know. I think Darkman's probably a better example of that.
That's what I was just going to say, too. I mean, the original comic book movie, not based on a comic book, Darkman.
Right. Sam Raimi getting his feet wet before he got into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So The Marksman coming in number 1. Guys, I don't know. None of us, I assume, care about this movie. It's a very niche thing. Is Liam Neeson kicking ass at 75 years old? It's not my jam.
No, my wife actually has watched this, and I declined to watch it with her. So I'm sorry.
Does she just have an appreciation for older action stars?
Oh yeah, I mean Liam Neeson. There's some legends about this guy. I mean, first of all, he can be attractive to the females because of some of the rumors that have been spiraled around Hollywood with his BD, and so
his biggest dickus.
Yes, his biggest dickus. So for whatever reason, I don't know, he has a connection, and my wife loves Taken. I love Taken too. And so she just pictures this as another Taken movie. And then when she's done watching it, she, of course, said, well, it wasn't as good as Taken. But I was like, yeah, duh.
Number 2 is kind of the big story that I think is one of note. The Croods back at number 2, topping Wonder Woman 1984. Actually went up this week to over $2 million at the box office. Was under $2 million last week. What the hell is going on?
Nick Cage is out for Liam Neeson's blood.
That's right, Nick Cage. I mean, and hasn't this movie, I think when I listened to you guys last time, you were talking about how it's been in the theaters for so long, still pulling in these numbers.
Shoot, I think at this point right now, it's been on VOD for a month already.
Yeah, it has. This is why it's so surprising. It's like, why is this all of a sudden getting a resurgence back into the top 2 of the box office, making money this time around?
Yeah, I think the reason is very, very clear. There has to be a kids movie in the movie theater at all times. If there's not a kids movie in the movie theater, whatever kids movie is in the movie theater will get those tickets because kids don't care what they're seeing. They like going to the movie theater. So whatever kids movie is showing gets money. I mean, simple math.
Very much so.
And I've heard good things about it. I heard it's actually pretty good. So that probably helps on the rewatch value. Mm-hmm. One movie that I have not heard good. One movie I've not heard good things about is our number 3, 1984, Wonder Woman 1984, $1.99 million. Most of those negative reviews come from my own mind. But what do you guys think of these numbers? Dropping down to number 3 after topping the box office for 3 weeks in a row.
I'm actually kind of curious as to what we're going to get here soon because it's on the verge of leaving HBO Max and losing the dual release where it will still be in theaters. So you're going to probably and potentially run into those people that still haven't seen it yet, still want to see it. So I think there is actually a possibility that we actually will get either an equate to what they're doing now or go up next week because it's around literally a week. So if it's not next week, it will be the following week where there'll be at least a little bit of an uptick.
What did the comic book fans think of this, and what do you guys think of?
You can't tell me you two haven't seen the movie yet.
I totally have seen the movie. We saw it the day of.
Same here.
And I gotta say, the opening was amazing, and there were a few cool moments I think throughout it, but it just kind of fell short for me because I'm riding the tide of the success of the first one. And so I went into it like, we'll see, like the reviews, going into the release were nagging on it a little bit. So I don't know, but it wasn't Wonder Woman 1, that's for sure. So, and opportunity for a much better soundtrack. Gosh, what a missed opportunity. The 80s? Right? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Especially when your first teaser trailer is Blue Monday.
Agreed.
And I can't even say off the top of my head if I even remember if Blue Monday was even in the movie itself.
I don't think there was an 80s song in the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember. Now that you've said that, John, that has never been a complaint of mine. But like now I'm thinking back, like, no, they didn't have a soundtrack. How could the best part of Guardians of the Galaxy having the 80s connection be that they had a cool soundtrack and you rip off as much as you can from Stranger Things and Guardians of the Galaxies and don't take that? Come on, right, my man. It's I have a theory that it's all the reason that this was not successful is because they had a screenwriter that was writing for the screen on number 1, and on number 2 they gave it to Jeff Johns and the director for the screenplay. The screenplay is really important. Jeff Johns is a comic book writer. Me and John have read hundreds, thousands of his comic books. He's been on every major comic book of all time, and this is a perfect comic book story that takes place in Wonder Woman 270 to 273. There's a wish, the wish goes away, blah blah blah, but it doesn't work as a big movie, and I think that's kind of clear.
I will say, just for the sake of comparing the first one to the second one, I think that there are things about the second one that I think did better than the first one, just because of when you in the first one, when you find out who is Ares, who's the one who's behind everything going on, I felt kind of let down, where at least this time Pedro Pascal is very strong throughout the entire film. So I do think that some of the things that did not work, like disembodied, let's figure out how we're going to bring Chris Pine, was weird, but it also wasn't Professor Lupin trying to be the badass villain of the first one either.
Yeah, I agree. The first one is perfect except for the last 30 minutes or whatever. So
the worst part of the first one is the only good part of the second one.
Right.
Give us more Pedro Pascal in these type of movies. He's
with that 80s hair.
With that 80s hair and that slogan, life is good, but it can be better. Number 4, News of the World, $1 million, Tom Hanks Western, still making some good money. Number 5.
Yes, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either. It's like takes place at the Civil War, so I'm interested. It's like about a Texan or something like that. I don't know. Excited. I'm gonna watch it for sure. Just haven't got around to it yet.
Right. I mean, come on, it's Tom Hanks. He doesn't typically do wrong.
Yeah, America's Tom Hanks.
America's dad.
Number 5, Monster Hunter, just under $1 million. This movie would be a lot better if Tom Hanks was in it, I am sure. Could you imagine that? Tom Hanks in a Paul W.S. Anderson movie? That would rule. I've not heard good things about this one, though.
Hey, you never know. After just recently watching Borat 2 and seeing Tom Hanks pop up, you never know.
That's true.
Do we call that popping up?
I don't care. The fact that you're stuttering trying to rebuttal that is my perfect example of why I'm right.
Tom, we're going to send you a green screen and a camera. You want to say these 2 lines for us? Okay.
It was hilarious, though, and it was
hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about Monster Hunter. Haven't seen it yet, but I have watched every single, whatever. What was the Resident Evil movie? I watched them all. I couldn't tell you like the plots, but Umbrella Academy. She's really cool and she becomes more powerful, and that Raven scene is cool. I don't know.
I would just like to point out the comic book guy just got a video game and a comic book screwed up.
You're a good man.
And mind you, the only reason I even know the Umbrella Academy is a comic book is because Gerard Way did it for Netflix. That's the only reason I know.
Yeah, what's it in? What is it though? The Umbrella Corp or something?
The Umbrella Corporation.
There it is. That was close.
I couldn't resist poking on the comic book guy making a.
Sorry, guys.
We got to take the wins when we can when we have comic book people.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Because they'll school us otherwise. So
All right, so that is the box office for the week. We are going to need to do some schooling here because, Brian, we're going to kick it off with the news and some comic book movie news right at the top.
Right. Well, might as well. You know, we got some comic book guys here. First one here, it hasn't been exactly said what is entitled to and what's going on here, but Chris Evans to return as Captain America to the MCU. I myself personally, I'm a big fan of the MCU, regardless of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, if I was Chris Evans and being able to stay in the Mouse House and be able to keep the shield for as long, or his version of the shield, being that he's given it away to the Falcon, I'm all for it. Even if it's in a small cameo capacity, like when he even, when it was Loki transforming into Captain America during, Thor, that sort of thing. Even if it's just a little bit, I will take Chris Evans as Captain America for as long as he is willing to don the shield. So I'm all completely okay with this.
I think that I've always been fascinated with people that don't want to continue that kind of a gig, because to your point, it is a very successful situation to be a part of. And the MCU, I completely agree. I see it as this big accomplishment that really we haven't really seen done to the scale before. Thinking about the reoccurring characters, the blending of movies together with Infinity War, that was really cool in Endgame. So I think the whole thing is awesome. I think that if he comes back, that is awesome as well. But it's not like I would prioritize like his character over another one. Like for me, I'm just excited about the whole picture, truthfully. So to me, it's exciting to see him sticking on board with it for consistency's sake. Because the biggest thing I hate is recasting. I'm a huge continuity guy with my comics, and same thing with my movies. If you change my actors like War Machine, I'm going to be really grouchy about it.
Though, in the defense of War Machine, though, as much as I do like Terrence Howard. I think Don Cheadle has done a far better job.
Much better job.
So that is one of those like castings where it's like, oh no,
yep.
Okay.
Hashtag justice for Ed Norton. Yeah, when I heard this news, I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I don't think he'll come back in a full movie. Like, we're not getting another Captain America movie or Captain America as a member of the Avengers.
He's going to be supporting.
Yeah, he'll pop up in a scene, like as Captain America. I'm assuming probably like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is a great opportunity for him to come back as a version of Captain America, or even one of these series. Maybe he pops up, in one of the new Disney Plus series. I think it'd be cool also if they do want to do a full Captain America project, to do a 6-episode series on Disney Plus where he's returning the Infinity Stones that's set up at the end of Endgame. I think that's maybe the best way to bring him back in a full-time capacity, and then kind of that's it for his character. But yeah, I think this is awesome news. I never expected him to actually ever retire as Captain America. Same with Robert Downey Jr. He'll pop up again as Iron Man. There's no doubt about it.
Hands down.
Yeah, they made their money. I mean, so they're going to keep on doing it. But I mean, me personally, I'm, burnt out on the MCU. I haven't even watched WandaVision yet. I don't really care at all about any more superhero movies at all. I think Chris Evans is one of the greatest actors of our generation. And one of my favorite types of movies are hard-nosed action movies that are rated R. And I think if we got Chris Evans to get off of this and then start, do a couple of movies that way, I think it would be really good. Also, I think he knows that he likes working with good directors, as we know with Snowpiercer and some of the other pieces that he's done. So we know he is capable of finding really good directors that are asking big things out of him. So let's see him go to his next stage of his career. So that's my personal opinion. That is very contrarian, I know, from most of society, but that's just, I guess my take on it.
In your notation of WandaVision, I will say it is something that is completely different and at least worth entertaining to watch, especially just for the sake of the 50 sitcom version of what they've got going on, because it's very Twilight Zone meets Dick Van Dyke and Bewitched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will give it a shot. It's based on one of my favorite writers, Tom King's storyline. So I'm going to be watching it. I love the graphic novel. I mean, I've collected it in single issues, and then I have the graphic novel so I can share it to other people when they say like, oh, I'm excited for WandaVision. I'm always like, read this. And so I'm definitely will watch it, but just like almost having it be a part of the MCU is making it less appealing to me because I am so burnt out on the mouse making movies that all look alike and all have the same feeling and all have the same vibe. And they ain't for me, Johnny boy.
I know. This is our show in a nutshell. Like, I'm the good angel and Tom's over here down and everything.
As someone,
at least I know I've got some backing on my end here from one of the comic book guys.
I was going to say our screen is perfectly split how we feel, because I feel the same way about the MCU, except when I watched WandaVision, I'm like, yes, this is what you need to do. Be different this way.
Good. That's good. That's awesome.
So, yeah, I definitely recommend it in that capacity.
And I just want to throw in, how exciting is it to have a television show that actually matters to the MCU finally? Because Shield promised to be that. It wasn't that.
They gave up on that in like the first season.
Yeah. It was so, it's such a, like, oh, we're going to mention this, we're going to allude to this one thing and have a cameo from someone that wasn't a prominent player. Okay. You know, and I don't know. So a wasted potential, and very excited to see where this goes. So Tom, give it a shot. You will change your mind, and then we'll be on the same page.
I will.
All right, so moving on. Well, sticking into the MCU that Mr. Tom is burnt out on, Kevin Feige has talked about the fact that Deadpool 3 will be rated R and will be part of the MCU. So give me a rated R Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, because if for the sake of Chris Evans being Captain America until the day he dies, nobody else had ever better played Deadpool than Ryan Reynolds.
Agree.
I one thing I like about this is this says to for us that Feige, you make mention of the MCU, the same tone, the same thing over and over again. That's why you're burnt out on it. That this is, to me, says Feige saying, we're going to take those necessary chances now that we've kind of made through our first batch, our first 10 years. The Twilight Zone-esque of WandaVision, the fact that Deadpool 3 will be rated R and still be part of it. I mean, to me, that's a big thing because, with Deadpool constantly doing the breaking of the fourth wall thing, it's going to be very tricky in how they're going to incorporate this. But the fact that we will get, that Deadpool will get to stay rated R, I think is exciting too.
Yeah, and they put out a PG-13 version of the last one. They can do it of this one again if they need to for a younger audience to, double cash in the Disney method of stealing as much money as possible from everybody involved in seeing this stuff.
We should mention that this podcast is sponsored by Disney.
Mental note, Tom doesn't like Disney.
Oh, my goodness.
I love them. I just hate them, too.
Well, I'll say this really quick here, Tom. One of the things that it seems that why this is kind of burnt out is we have a studio specifically and dedicated to superhero and comic book movies, where like you have your studios like Blumhouse that are, we do horror, this is what we do. As a comic book person, I would think myself personally, the fact that you have a dedicated studio who's got all the resources specifically to produce. When you're talking about your writers and all the people that write the books and all this canon that you have to be able to use from, I would think that, to have a dedicated studio, because look at the disaster that has been the DC movies, because it's Warner Brothers as a studio who does not have, other than licensing their own property to a bunch of people who are all that, so, burnt out or not, I think that's one of the reasons why I think the MCU's been so successful is because they have the dedicated studio and the dedicated resources to make it happen properly.
I mean, you're right. I mean, Brian, 100%, man. And I've seen every single Marvel Universe movie in the movie theater. Even after I was like, I'm sick of this. Okay, I'll go first weekend. Because that's what comic book people love, to be miserable and hate on the things that they love the most. And that's just a part of our being. I mean, so much so that I don't read Marvel or DC comics at all anymore. I don't read superhero comics. So I'm definitely where John is a part of continuity. He knows every superhero, thing that's happening now, buys every run. I don't do that. I'm constantly looking for that indie, cool, heady, very smart or different or whatever thing. And that's why I like comics so much, because it's just a medium for storytelling, just like films is a medium for storytelling. With films, you have to have a budget. With comics, every single comic has the unlimited budget of whatever that artist can think to draw. So that's just kind of why I like comics and stories. So that's why, as a person who has seen Warner Brothers screw it up, and even though Marvel is putting in all these comics, I should be happy. I'm really not. And you know what? Warner Brothers has been screwing up for a long time. Speaking of Monty Python, J.K. Rowling said, I would like Terry Gilliam to be the one to direct Harry Potter 1. And they said, yeah, right. Not going to happen. And it's like, just think how awesome that Harry Potter series would be. I mean, in my eyes, better if Terry Gilliam would have been at the helm.
I guess I can't argue, but then again, I'm also kind of Terry Gilliam. At least for me, it wasn't much of as a black hole as it was for Casey when we started all of this here. It sounds like he's been getting better, but
I have been getting better, and you know what? I dig Terry Gilliam. He's the man, and that would have ruled if he would have done Harry Potter. But as far as like this goes, I think I kind of want to jump off what Tom just said, is that comic books kind of had this unlimited budget in a way when you do a comic book. But you also got to keep continuity if you're doing like a Marvel or DC run. I think that's one thing that at least the Deadpool character can jump in his third movie as a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He can poke fun of his first 2 movies weren't part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think the direction that the entire MCU is going with being connecting multiverses, I mean, Toby and Andrew are showing up in the next Spider-Man movie. They haven't confirmed it. They will, okay? So the fact that they're opening up multiverses and different already set up cinematic comic book universes into this one, I think it just opens the floodgates for everything else to pop in. I mean, shoot, we could get Wesley Snipes as Blade popping up in one of these movies. That would rule. Yeah, my only pitch for this movie is just call it Deadpool Kills the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It would do great. They got a great comic to go on, and I would love it. I mean, I as much as I'd love to hate it, I think clearly Deadpool is doing something way different than what those other Marvel movies are doing. So I love seeing this. Great.
All of a sudden, I want some sort of multiverse thing where I've got Mahershala Ali and Wesley Snipes as Blade and Blade just taking out a bunch of vampires.
Awesome.
You know what, Brian? Some motherfuckers try to skate uphill. I'm dropping that F-bomb because I know we will probably have other ones. I will be the first one to drop.
All right. So can I get out of the MCU finally?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how I feel about this anyway. So it has come to light that Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem will play Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz in an Aaron Sorkin being the Ricardos. I don't see it. I'm sorry. As somebody who grew up on Nick at Night and the Lucy, the Lucille Ball show and old black and white, something like that, I'm sorry. Javier Bardem does not even remotely like the person I think of when I think of, Ricky Ricardo. You might get a little bit maybe of Nicole Kidman and Lucille Ball, but I don't like this casting at all. I don't know where they're trying to go with this. I mean, being that it's Sorkin, it tells me it's probably going to be more of a serious kind of thing than be a goofy comedy that what Lucy was. But like, for one, if you're going to have a, Desi Arnaz on screen, I don't know, have him cast by, a Cuban, I'm just saying. I mean,
I'm shocked it's not Oscar Isaac. He plays every Latino character that is cast in any movie.
At least right now, he's probably got a better shot at least pulling off being Desi Arnaz than Javier Bardem does right now.
Oh, come on. Pedro Pascal would crush this as well,
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, I looked at this. The first thing I immediately did when I saw this casting is I Googled Javier Bardem. I'm like, this dude's Spanish. Is this the kind of thing where, like, they make the comment about, just put a bunch of white people in there and nobody will notice just because he's of a Latin, background. There's a difference between a Spaniard and a Cuban.
Hey, Brian, we could have had Scarlett Johansson play Desi Arnaz in this movie. It's okay.
Yeah, this seems like clear Oscar bait. It's like Sorkin, they're doing something that's going to be period, so they're going to be able to put it all back. It's going to be big set design. It's going to be, quick talking. It's going to be the behind the scene gritty look at what it was like on I Love Lucy, something like that, and it's like that's why Javier Bardem, he's Oscar bait, board again, whatever. And Nicole Kidman, she's looking for that Oscar. She's constantly been trying to take these roles these last few years that are Oscar movies. And so I feel like that's what this is going to be. And, some people will absolutely love it. And a lot of people will, probably think it's meh.
Yeah. And I'm on the contrary, though, of the Nicole Kidman thing, though, just because she seems to be absolutely crushing it on the TV side of things and winning Emmys to the point where, like, I don't even remember the last time I even saw her in an actual film, to the point where I'm like, she's found her lane, stick with it, because that's where she's getting her notoriety from. So
she wasn't the first choice in this movie either, though.
Who was the first choice?
Cate Blanchett was originally cast in this role, and then had to drop out, and then Nicole Kidman stepped in here. I don't care about the casting, really. I'm not a huge fan of Nicole Kidman or Javier Bardem. I can see him in these roles, but Sorkin's the name that's, if he's attached to this, I'm like, okay, I'm already interested. I will probably already watch this movie just because his name is on it. And he's 2 for 2 as a director. Chicago 7 is one of my favorite movies of this year, and yeah, I'm ready to see what he can do with this story. Him telling real life stories works perfect. Can you imagine a Social Network style I Love Lucy movie? Yeah,
exactly.
Lucy's going to start turning in her grave. All right. So yes, the next thing we've got here is Kevin Hart is pulling a Adam Sandler and signs a 4-picture deal with Netflix. Because it's Netflix. It's Netflix money. If you had a guaranteed 4-picture deal and you were getting paid, Netflix is really starting to shell out for 2021, and I think it's just going to be, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I'm not surprised by this. I think this is just one of many things that we still have yet to hear from for 2021 for Netflix.
Yeah, I think also this is the way comedies have to go, is through these different places, because we're in a different world with movie theaters, with people going to the movie theater. It's hard to get them anyway. You see big budget movies are the kind of gonna have to kind of be the way, and comedies may take the place of, and every once in a while that's wrong, right? I know that's they prove the point that a comedy make $100 million, but for the most part, it's safe to spend $20 to $30 million on a comedy and get $50 million back, and that's may not be what you have to do. So I say Kevin Hart, smart deal, dude. Get your money.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't care. I don't like Kevin Hart. I don't like Kevin Hart. Give me Hubie Halloween 2. That's the news I want to hear.
Yeah, I loved Hubie Halloween.
Hell yeah.
Loved it.
Oh, at least we've got more people on our side, Casey.
More have joined the cult of Hubie. I like it.
Yes. All right. On to the next thing here. It's the Netflix 2021 film preview burner that they just sent out here. The fact that we will have a brand new movie every single week in the 2021. We've already gotten pieces of Woman with Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf last week. This week was Across the Wire, Over the Wire, forget, with Anthony Mackie. I don't remember the name of it. Something Notice, whatever, with Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds and The Rock, all in one film. It literally sounded like Netflix was like, how much do we want to spend on AAA talent? And the answer was just yes.
Red Notice, I think, is the name of that.
Oh, Red Notice. There you go. Yeah. But I'm excited for this here because, like Tom alluded to, the film industry is changing. There's no doubt about it. COVID just basically helped speed up that process. And, if any of these people, as an actor, a writer, a director, whether or not they want to pull the Nolan card and be like cinema and they want to work. They want to get paid. They want to do what they want to make. And if making a Netflix movie is the way, and you go Scorsese making The Irishman, hey, I have Netflix, so I get to reap the benefits from it. So,
Brian, you just sound like John Lovitz from The Wedding Singer, and I'm reaping all the benefits.
And your point is what?
I don't know. That had nothing to do with this. That's just what it reminded me of. But when I watched this trailer, I'm like, all right. This is a lot of movies going on here at Netflix, which I dig. Like I said before the show started, Netflix needs to start promoting their movies a little better. I think that's one of the biggest faults of Netflix. Like, even as a person who hosts a weekly movie podcast and loves watching movies, I sometimes don't even know what movies are on Netflix because they just don't promote them. So I think they can find a better way to do that. And I mean, the biggest one I'm looking forward to out of that group that they showed was the Fear Street, that they picked up those 4 movies I believe they're putting out in October. Fear Street. So yeah, that's my favorites I'm looking forward to. And I mean, ending the trailer in I feel it's a very ballsy move to just be like, yeah, we got Leo. That's how that trailer ends. It's just like, boom, we got Leo, and that's it. Nothing about the movie, just him on an airplane getting off
with J-Law on top of it.
Yeah.
Like that moment, America's Leo. So I think Netflix. I think as a movie fan, I do love seeing movies in films. In movies and films in theaters. So I do like that. Like the State Theater in Sioux Falls, smaller movies will show Netflix and Amazon Prime movies on the big screen. I'm totally okay having these things go day and date, especially if a lot of viewers prefer that way. Myself, as a purist, I do like seeing things on the big screen. I like when I'm forced to not have my phone. I'm like when I'm forced to watch something in one viewing. And so, in turn, just as long as they keep doing that with, they don't have to put all 52 of those movies into a big screen. But for the ones that are important, when they do have top-notch talent, I do want to have a chance to see those in the big theater, and I don't care if other people don't. The movies can become theaters can become more niche, and that's okay with me, because I will continue to go, just as long as I do hope they do promote and put things out in theaters, so things can be nominated for Oscars, and things can go on the award train, and people can hold them as higher grade films.
Totally. Okay, so on to that here. It looks like we did get our first look at the upcoming rated R Mortal Kombat from Warner Brothers. I just briefly saw just a few of the images. Number one, I've been a fan of Mortal Kombat since, granted, probably more Mortal Kombat 2 than was the original Mortal Kombat, but I've been a fan of them basically since the 90s, since long before Casey was born. But I really enjoyed the first one. Obviously, the second one was horrible. I've recently bought it on digital cheap and for Annihilation, rewatched it, and I didn't realize exactly how bad that movie really was. I need to see a trailer for this. Images, the images haven't done anything for me. I really don't have anybody in this movie that I know, which is probably going to be a good thing. It's not like, Jean-Claude Van Damme in Street Fighter. But I like the fact that we're getting, at least starting to get the promotion for Mortal Kombat. Hopefully we'll get something good at it, that maybe we'll have some more Mortal Kombat movies to come in light later on.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to suck big time. I mean, it's movie based on a video game. It's going to be like 100% CGI. It's going to just probably look animated. I want this to be good, and I know I'm not going to like it at all. So I mean, once again, John, I know it's driving you crazy having me say it.
I almost dropped the F-bomb, second F-bomb of the show. I'm going to behave myself. I have to peacefully disagree with Tom. So check this out, you guys. There is nothing more fun than getting that Mortal Kombat soundtrack and banging that CD in your boombox and jumping off the bed when you're a kid. You know what I mean? Like, there is a magic to it. And check this out, you guys. I am the worst at arcade button masher fighting games. I cannot play them for the life of me. But I am that guy that is going to go to YouTube and watch all the story scenes from all these new titles on YouTube back to back to back. Get the whole story. Get the cutscenes and everything. Show me the move. Show me the gameplay. I can't do it myself. I'm all right with that. But I love the stories. I love the characters. They're so rich. There's a couple comic books out there, iterations of it that I've picked up over the years. And I'm excited to see what it looks like, because the thing that got Mortal Kombat 2, in my opinion, would have been the acting and then just overall special effects. Well, now there's actually hope on that front, where I'm very curious to see what does it look like. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful.
And you do, at least Tom, you do have to at least to agree to the point, for the sake of a video game movie being translated into film. At least Mortal Kombat is a film where you at least have the canon and the backstory and something that's a lot fleshed out compared to other movies that have attempted to try to become movies, or video games to become movies.
I can agree to that. And one of the greatest film premises, for me at least, of all time is, hey man, just show me a bunch of different fighters from a bunch of different backgrounds and have them have a tournament. So I mean, just as long as they stick to the Bloodsport template, then I'm gonna probably be okay with it.
Yeah, I think it's only uphill from here. I mean, the best comic or video game movie ever made is the first Mortal Kombat, so I think it's only can go up from here. Yeah, I think many of the studios are kind of hinging on what's going to be the big video game movie that's going to hit, and now we can all finally make all the video game movies that we own the rights to. I don't know if it's going to be I think we've said this last 2 years we've done the show, maybe this will be it, maybe this one, and that's how I feel with Mortal Kombat. The images look good, the stills look good. Again, a trailer will help. I think it'll also help that this is going straight to HBO Max and theaters the same day. You're going to get quite a few eyes on it on this movie, at least the first month or so. But yeah, again, it remains to be seen how well this movie is going to do and how it's going to turn out. I do like that there's an unknown cast.
James Wan
is attached as a producer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that means nothing to me.
If
he was directing, like, okay, all right, then we're getting a James Wan directed Mortal Kombat. That's more intriguing. But from what I remember, this is a first-time director taking on this. Good or bad, I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. Now I'm going to leave this one probably more to you, Casey, here. Brendan Fraser to star in Darren Aronofsky's film The Whale. I'm seeing the look on Tom's face.
That's so awesome. That's the coolest news I've ever heard. What? I mean, I didn't know. I was waiting for the next Aronofsky film. I can't believe it's going to star Brendan Fraser. He's a F-bomb genius, man.
The Fraser Sans continues.
I know. Brendan Fraser's one of those ones where it's like he needs to get more. He needs to get more shine and more work than that he's been given lately. He deserves more. He totally does. I mean, come on, really? I mean, other than like a little blip here and there, all I can think of off the top of my head is the small cameo he did in G.I. Joe as of the last like 10 years.
He had a big role in Doom Patrol, right? He's one of the leads. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, and that's I mean, outside of Doom Patrol, which I've done about one episode in, but even that one episode, I'm like, okay, I'm so glad I got Brendan Fraser in Doom Patrol.
Yeah, I think this news is incredible. I mean, it's my pitch is very different than what this movie is going to end up being. It's about a dude that's a 600-pound man that cannot move or leave. That's who Brendan Fraser is playing. I hope they go crazy practical effects. Brendan Fraser is wearing tons of prosthetics. He totally would too. I think he's in that point of his career. He's like, yeah, let's do something crazy and wild. And Aronofsky is the guy to do it with. I mean, my pitch was, telling the Bible through the perspective of a whale. A la Mother, but that's not going to happen, which is okay. But this sounds awesome. It's going to be dark, depressing, and I think Brendan Fraser is the perfect guy to cast in this because he'll at least bring a little bit of glimmer into the Aronofsky dark and doom and gloom.
Well, and I see it as being in this kind of film is the kind of thing that I think could really even jumpstart that career too. To say, hey, you're used to be seeing me like this. Now look at me this way, And who knows? Maybe we definitely get that next wave of Brendan Fraser movies that we didn't see coming.
And Encino Man too, yeah.
All you care about is grindage and nugs. It's one of my favorite lines from that movie. Something like that.
I just want Encino Man 2 now.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's all you care about is chillin', grindage, and nugs. Very funny.
Hey, Pauly Shore had a movie last year. We could see it at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I still need to watch The Guest House.
Do you?
I didn't see it.
No one saw it.
Big old Pauly Shore beard and hair thing got going on. He looked like Casey if he hadn't shaved or anything like that in like a year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all the news we got going on this week anyway.
All right. Very cool. Some wide variety of news to talk about. Kicking off comic book movie talk and then jumping into Brendan Fraser starring in an Aronofsky movie. Hell yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to coming soon. This is what's coming out to theater, streaming, anything else in between. You can go check it out on backlot605.com. We have a full coming soon article each and every week that lays it out even in more depth than we do on the show. So go check that out. First up, in a slow news week as far as coming soon goes, the only new release that we are getting is the 7th film in the Wrong Turn franchise, aptly named just Wrong Turn.
So we're having one of those kind of horror movies again, where the 7th movie is named like the first movie.
It's one of those, yeah. Hitting theaters one night only for a Fathom Event screening, January 26th. Wrong Turn. Even as a horror fan, I have not seen any of these movies. This may just come down to, at some point, I'm going to have to just watch 7 Wrong Turn movies some weekend.
And you realize you made a wrong turn by watching those 7 movies.
Probably. Moving on, let's go to this week's re-release back into theaters. Again, a Fathom Events screening here. The Maltese Falcon, classic Hollywood film, January 24th and the 27th. Back in theaters, 2 nights only, Fathom Events. Really surprised me. Fathom is still trying to do these, but I think I wonder what their numbers are looking at like right now. I don't know. I know Fathom Events are very hit and miss here in Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're doing a anime, it's a hit. If they're doing anything else, it is a miss.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was going to say, this is really quick here, is for the sake of the Fathom events, having been to a couple Fathom events that were not anime, as you so put it here, I don't think this is really hurting them at all, just because there's not usually a high attendance anyway. So the fact that we're social distancing within theaters, I think this is having little to no impact. Like, these are not meant to be money-making events other than just getting these movies into the big theaters, because like Tom alluded to with the fact, like the State Theater, we're getting things in the theater that, like, I've never seen the Maltese Falcon, and to get some of these anniversaries come in, these aren't meant to be moneymakers. These are just meant to be like, hey, we got this for this anniversary. So I think it'll be fine. I don't think they're hurting anything for this. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a huge film guy. I love the Maltese Falcon. I mean, it's a AFI top 100 movie. It's American Treasure. So I would love to go see the Maltese Falcon again. It's a black and white classic. Turns out in the end, it's kind of like this twist that everything is for naught. Nothing even mattered at all. And it's like so beautiful in that way. So I would love to see this. I think it's great that Fathom's doing it. I've been to a bunch of Fathom events. I try to go to as many as I can. Like, I agreed, man. When you go to an anime one, it's like you can barely find a seat because they'll sell out. The other ones that will do okay is when they do like live music. And then I've been to those, and then people are just like standing in their seats, just like sneaking in booze and partying. And those have been pretty wild as well. But I would say for these old school movies, hey, I'm just happy that they're doing it. I think that's really cool. I'm going to go to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, was just in the State Theater. That's the kind of stuff I love to see, these American classics in the big screen. So I'm all for it, even though I'm sure it's not making any money.
Yeah, one of my biggest things now is that we have the State Theater. I'm like, I don't want to see any of these old movies in the Cinemark. I want to see them there at the State Theater. And speaking of, they're bringing in another Hollywood classic at the Sioux Falls State Theater this upcoming weekend. That Hollywood classic is Roman Holiday. They are also bringing in a Netflix movie, just came out this year to rave reviews, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the final performance from Chadwick Boseman, and the 1980s John Hughes classic, The Breakfast Club.
I can't wait. The coolest part about the State Theater is they show you these trailers when you go to the movie. So I heard Roman Holiday. I've heard people say, "Oh, Roman Holiday, it's Aubrey Hepburn," and I'd never seen it. I didn't know what it was about. Just went to the State Theater and saw Sound of Metal, and when it had the Roman Holiday trailer, I was like, "I'm sold, man! I'm gonna go to it. It's so cool." And then it had the trailer for all 3 of these. So I mean, I'm going to. If I can, I would like to go to all of these.
Right.
And what's really crazy about the State Theater is they must have some people that really care about them, because they're buying seats and they don't go to the movie at all. So like when you go to their ticket map, to pick a seat out, sometimes you can only get on the side. And then when you get there, there's only 3 or 4 people in the whole theater. So it's really, really cool. Whoever are you angel buyers of seats, please continue this up. We need the State Theater in town. Film fans like myself and all of us are, definitely appreciate that kind of stuff.
Just tell them to buy them on the side so we can get in the center.
Exactly. There needs to be an update sent out.
They should just have, every other row blocked off, and you have to, if you're not going, you have to buy the emptied row that they're blocked off.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, the one I would probably check out is The Breakfast Club. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite 80s movies. As Brian has his State Theater membership card there. Just came out this week. I think we all got it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go, Tom.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out that the State Theater must have some sort of connections, because they never got my address, but they got this mailed to me.
They know all,
awesome.
Brian. They know all.
I was like, who are you working for now?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been since I saw Jabberwocky about 2 weeks ago. So
Terry Gilliam, right?
Yeah.
There you go, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I do love that they're I mean, even looking at this week, again, they're playing a Hollywood classic, a brand new Netflix movie, and an 80s pop culture classic itself, The Breakfast Club. Such a wide array of movies. Like, you would never think to put all 3 in the same weekend, but I love what they're doing. I hope they continue what they're doing. We've heard some of the titles that might be playing in the next month, and I'm like, yep, please give me all of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's so cool. Speaking of the Breakfast Club, I just had finished Ready Player 2, and there is an entire giant section of the book just devoted to John Hughes movies, and it's really, really fun if you are a fan of any of his, so definitely check it out.
I'm getting that book now.
Can I jump in here? I wanted to bounce off of something that Tom had lifted up, and it got me to thinking. You guys are clearly movie guys. So a question that I had personally is drinking alcohol during movies. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, like, are you someone that as a viewer you want to be 100% with it when you're watching a movie for the first time, where you don't want to be drinking? Do you hate it when people around you drink at movies? Have you been to theaters where people drink? Because that's not a thing maybe just yet in Sioux Falls officially.
It is official.
It is.
Oh, it is?
It is official.
I'm totally behind the times. So.
Yep, the Western Mall and the state both have their licenses and already are doing it.
Okay.
For my sake here, am I probably going to be the one who's going to be having a drink with it? No. But that's more than even just the alcohol side of things. That's a whole different thing. But the fact, for the sake of the state and the West Mall Theater, having the ability to generate additional revenue.
Yeah.
The Casey's even made mention about this before, is the fact that, this isn't like going to a concert where every 20 minutes you're going to the bar to go get another drink. More than likely, it's going to be the kind of thing where the guy's going to go get a drink. That's what you're going to have instead of having like your pop or something like that. You're going to enjoy one drink. So you're not going to have that drunkard 4 aisles down from you like you would at a concert. You're just having somebody who's just having a respectable drink while they're watching a film and whatnot. So for me, I'm all for it, just because I think it'll be good for the sake of revenue. It gives you a different reason to want to go to the movies, because I can go have a beer, go relax, go enjoy a movie and whatnot, instead of going to like the bar or something like that. So I think it'll be great for not only the state, but for the West Mall, especially for something to be different than the Cinemark Theater in town.
And one thing I do really respect the State Theater for doing, they limit it to 2 beers or 2 glasses of wine per screening. So you can't, even if you wanted to get up every 5-10 minutes to grab another beer or whatever, they're going to stop. They're going to stop you at 2. So I hope that's lifted when they finally play The Room, so we can have a rowdy good time watching The Room. I am pitching it to the State Theater if they are listening. Please play Tommy Wiseau's classic The Room at some point at the Sioux Falls State Theater. But yeah, I mean, I like to have just. I'm not a heavy drinker. I will have one beer watching the movie, and that's it. And it's just a great time an experience that you can, just have a Fernson while you're at the State Theater. I think it's really fun.
I think it's really cool that they're all about the revenue. I am not going to, because if I have one beer, like, I shouldn't need to keep going, else I just fall asleep. So, like, there has been, when me and John, when Marvel movies were first coming out, they had only midnight movies. So, like, midnight movies were truly midnight movies. You had to go at midnight on Thursday. They didn't have it at 7. And so we would end up going to get a drink sometimes beforehand and be like, oh, yeah, I slept all the way through Iron Man 2. Oh, oops. Because I had 3 beers beforehand. So I'm super stoked.
It was Iron Man 2. You probably did it on purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't blame you for falling asleep during that one.
Exactly. So, no, I need caffeine during a movie. So, not for me, but super stoked for them to get some money into these theaters.
That's the same way. It's for me. It's not something I probably would do, but I know others that would. And if it's revenue generating, I'm all for it.
All right, so that is this week's Coming Soon. Again, like we said, a slow week, but plenty to still watch, at least on streaming. And for Sioux Falls residents, you have a stacked weekend at the State Theater downtown. So go check out everything they're doing and check out Coming Soon on backlot605.com. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to find a new way to find a little bright side of life on the other half of this show here. But let's jump into our little break here, and we'll see you in about a minute.
Hey you. Yes, you listening. You like comic book movies, don't you? Of course you do. Did you know comic book movies are based off physical comic books? Well, I'm here to tell you can be one of the first readers of the brand new comic book Polarized. Polarized is about 2 superpowered brothers on the run from the law and trying to right the wrongs of their past. You can pre-order the first 20-page issue today on Polarized73.com and get 10% off your order using promo code BACKLOT10. That's right, Polarized73.com and get 10% off your order using promo code BACKLOT10. This goes for everything on the site, including merch. This promo ends January 31st, so don't wait. Take your first leap into the world of Polarized today.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is not the Messiah, but he is a very naughty boy. Guys, we are talking about Monty Python's Life of Brian, 1979, the Python's third film, our third film in our Python miniseries here for the month of January.
I don't know how this could have been so much about my life. I was only 1 at the time when they made this. I mean, there wasn't much to talk about other than just shit in my diaper.
That could have been a joke out of this movie, too.
Yeah, no kidding.
So Monty Python's Life of Brian, like I said, the third Python film in their filmography. We will cover their 4th and final film next week, but let's kind of go around the horn. Let's give our story of our journey, our life of Brian, our journey of how many times we've watched Life of Brian. This is a first time watch, initial thoughts or history with the movie. Let's start with the namesake of this movie, Brian. Brian, this was your first time watching the movie about your own life. What was that like?
It was weird. It's not how I remember it. Yeah, this is the first time. I mean, the Pythons have been a huge blind spot for me for 40 years. But,
I like that you pointed out the date. That was funny. Yeah.
That I, going into this, knowing what I have officially seen, it wasn't maybe what I expected out of the Pythons, but it was enjoyable.
I like how you're trying to be so nice about this one and the last one.
Right.
Yeah, John. What about you? What was? Is this your first time watching it, or are you a fan of the Pythons?
Oh boy. So I have seen it one other time, but it was so long ago that this is literally probably my first time. Like seriously, I woke up this morning with a mission from God, and I was like, I'm going to watch this movie and be focused for the show tonight. So I am on it. And so for me, like the first time I saw it, it was like bits and pieces I remembered. Overall, it is. I completely agree with the statement of, I know of the name Monty Python, but for me, it's kind of not been in my vein of things that I would go out of my way to view. However, I will say that, it was just kind of, some cheeky humor. So, it was just all over the place, random. And for me, I was like, I'm okay with it. I'm glad that I had a chance to truly watch this and kind of make note of it. And there was some funny moments in it, I thought. So.
Yeah, it's funny as hell. I guess I'll go with it. My Life of Brian is pretty rich. It's my favorite Monty Python movie. When Brian asked if I could be on the show, and he was, if me and John could be on the show, and he said Monty Python, I actually requested. I said, hey, anyway, I could get Life of Brian. I love. So I guess a little bit of history with the Pythons in general. I do find them to be really, really funny. I do definitely have my favorites, but I'm not like fully sold. When I first saw, Flying Circus on like PBS when we were growing up, I was born in '85. So when on PBS when we were growing up, Monty Python reruns of the Flying Circus were on PBS all the time, and it was like it looked old and it looked grainy, kind of like MASH or something. And like when I was young, if something looked old, I was like, no, not for me. I only like cool stuff. And so it wasn't my thing. Then when I got into high school and I'm kind of like finding, who my people are. And it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely comic book literacy and, writing or, reading books and looking at nerd culture and history of, pop culture. Monty Python's constantly coming up. I mean, I've seen the references in The Simpsons and I'm hearing people talk about it, thinking that it's like, this Flying Circus. And then I actually do end up seeing the Holy Grail. And, and it's like, okay, this isn't just like Flying Circus. This, even though they're doing quick scenes that could be considered sketches, this is absolutely right up my alley. And at that point, I had basically saw all of the Monty Pythons that I could get my hands on when I was in high school. But it was different then. I couldn't just, they didn't have the internet with endless streaming. If it didn't have it at Lewis Drug when I wanted to rent on the 25-cent section that my mom would allow me to get, I wasn't getting it until I got a little bit older. And then when I was in my 20s, I collected every single VHS that I could get, and I got all of the Monty Pythons. And I probably watched Life of Brian more during that time, probably 10, 15 times, trying to show people different funny bits that I liked about it. My favorite part being that it is so blasphemous about religion, and it really does just, if I would show somebody who is truly, truly a hard Christian that didn't have a funny bone in their body, they would be very, very upset after watching this movie. And as I grew up Christian, I thought like being naughty is cool. I think this is cool. It's saying, it's flipping religion on its head, talking about in such general terms of being negative and how it can ebb and flow so quickly. And then that's where I held on. Then I probably haven't watched it in 10 years though, because as my movie going has broadened, I found out that I wasn't really a Monty Python person as much as I liked the humor and the kind of what they were doing with Life of Brian. And I really enjoy Terry Gilliam and his art style. So I like the beginning. I like the cutscenes. I like a lot of the animations that people find are boring. That is my favorite part. And then growing on to Terry Gilliam, finding all of his films and then watching them all and loving them all. And then so I'm a huge, huge Terry Gilliam fan. And so in turn, that is my biggest connection to the Pythons, is through Terry Gilliam, me liking even up into his, his latest work. I enjoy every single movie. Nobody does art direction and set design like Terry Gilliam. He is a one of a kind mad genius. And so that's my history with this. And it was fun to revisit and, see some full frontal male nudity and just like get into the things that I love.
So you end the male nudity and the things you love. I think you might want to put stuff in between that context, because otherwise,
I'm not. I mean, God knows I've loved full fronted male nudity, female nudity. It's like I love it. I love when it goes shocking. And one of our comic book things that I love to do is if there's nudity in my comic, I show people right away. It's my favorite thing. I love dropping dong.
There needs to be more dongs in movies. # more dongs in movies. I've explained in the last couple episodes my love of the Pythons. I mean, Holy Grail was my introduction. Watched it dozens of times in high school, and then Life of Brian was my second venture outside of Holy Grail for the Python crew. And when I finally watched that, man, I was very torn on. For me, Holy Grail was like, okay, that's the Holy Grail of comedies. And then I watched Life of Brian. I'm like, they just one-upped themselves. They created the greatest comedy ever, and then the next movie is also the greatest comedy ever. I love Monty Python's Life of Brian. I do think that and Holy Grail are two of the top 10 greatest comedies ever put to screen, and it is crazy that the same group pulls out magic twice in a row. I think this is one of the movies that you just have to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. You have to talk about the reactions to it. I mean, for me, I grew up in a very Christian household, and so Python was by the time I was in high school, I could kind of venture out into more risque stuff. But when I finally saw Life of Brian senior year of high school, it was kind of mind-blowing, because in many ways how they felt about religion and what they were showing in this movie is how I was starting to feel at that time in my life, was how they viewed it. And I think the biggest testament to this movie, not to throw out a Bible reference, but is that they treat religion like a joke, but they don't treat what people follow in religion, Jesus Christ at least, as the joke. He's never the joke. He's still Jesus Christ, because I think one of my favorite tidbits about this movie is how they came up with the concept of Life of Brian. Is that they are promoting Holy Grail. They're out running promotions, and someone asked the group, "What's your next project? What are the Pythons doing next?" And Eric Idle just says, "Jesus Christ, Lust for Glory."
I wish it was titled. I wish they would have done that. But yes, I understand why they didn't. But that's so funny.
So that was where the concept, like, they had nothing, and it was a joke answer by Eric Idle. He's like, "Well, I'm just going to say something funny. It'll get a laugh." But when they started talking about it, it was like, wait, maybe we could continue our historical epics like Holy Grail, but do the story of Jesus. And I think the first concept they came up with is one I still wish the Pythons would have just done as a one-off sketch, is how Jesus books the Last Supper at the restaurant they're going to. And so basically goes into this restaurant and says, "Well, I need to book a table for 12. Like, "Well, how about 3 tables of 4? And he's like, "No, they all need to be pushed together. We all have to be on the same side as well." It's like just that type. You can already put the sketch together in your head how the Pythons would have done that. But then they found out we can't make fun of Jesus because everything he said was good. Like, how do you make fun of the guy?
I love it. I heard one of the sketches that they were going to do when they were planning it, where Jesus was going to be the main character, was they put him up on the crucifix, and the crucifix keeps breaking and falling apart, and then they have to have Jesus, the carpenter, like teaches the Romans how to build a crucifix, build one that's going to stand the test of time, going to be done right, and then they put him up on there. It's like, whoa, man, you can't do that. So,
me being a person who's not very religious, even looking at that going, no. Like you draw a certain line,
Yeah, exactly.
Part of me still wants to see what would have been the Monty Python's Jesus Christ, Lust for Glory, what that would have looked like. But I think they knew what direction they had to go, and where this ended up is perfect in itself. Telling the story of a man who was born the same time as Jesus, is constantly thought of as being Jesus or another Messiah or another savior of humanity. And Man, and another concept that they came up, in the history of this movie is that Brian was going to be the 13th disciple, but whenever Jesus, performed a miracle or gave a speech or was with the disciples, Brian was off doing something else, getting distracted, and would show up late.
It's another great concept. I laugh at all these.
And you can, like I said, you can already see the Pythons where they would have gone with all these sketches. And I mean, I think where they went is just as perfect. And we talked about last week their funding for their movies, which I find very interesting in their first three movies, especially where they get the funding for their movie. Like we said, with Holy Grail is funded by Pink Floyd. Playboy funded, and now for something completely different. This one has maybe the craziest and most notorious story of them all. The Pythons are trying to find funding for their Jesus Christ Lust for Glory movie. No one wants to do it. Wonder why. I don't know why any studio wouldn't want to, give a budget to that, but they could not find anyone. So finally, Eric Idle sets up a meeting with his then good friend, George Harrison, and he says, I just want to see the movie. Here's all the money you guys need to make this. So George Harrison basically pawns his house, says, I'll pay for that later. Go make your guys' movie. So he gives him the money, and I mean, 40 years later, here we are with Life of Brian, funded by George Harrison.
And I don't know what it did on box office, but I bet it made money. I'm sure the Beatle got his money back. It was probably a wise investment.
I don't think the Beatle was hurting for money anyway. I'm just saying.
No. So yeah, that's a little bit of the behind the scenes, some of the stuff I find fascinating about this movie, and we can talk as we're going through a bit more of what the movie's about, how people reacted to it even without having seen the movie, which tends to happen with any comedy that tries to play on religion. I mean, one of Brian's favorite directors, Kevin Smith, knows all about that. So this is kind of that back in the 70s version of Kevin Smith's controversy during the 90s. But let's jump into it. Life of Brian opens up as you would probably expect a Python film to start that is about Jesus Christ. You're at the birth of Jesus Christ. Except it's not Jesus Christ.
I want to point something out really quick, even when we get to that point. Because it's one of I actually was trying to make some notes here when I was watching this earlier. The opening credits to this and the music to this sounds like it should be a James Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, completely agree with that.
I'm listening and watching this, and I'm like, oh, I'm expecting James Bond to come on the screen, not Monty Python. So I wanted to make sure I got that out right away, because I was like, I know that's what we need to open. Yeah. Really quick, just I pulled up their domestic for Life of Brian. It only made like $20 million, and all but 500,000 of that was in the United States. So the British comedy troupe, getting funded by a Beatle, made all their money domestically. I find that crazy.
And on a budget of $3 to $4 million, they made their money back and some more. So the Beatle got his house back.
All right, sorry, continue.
So yeah, we're opening up with the life of the birth of Christ and our titular Brian, who is in the manger next door to Jesus. And so the three wise men show up to his manger, saying he is the Son of God. Guys, this is one of the best openings you could have thought of. This is one of the great comedic openings I think ever put to screen. What are your guys' thoughts on opening this movie straight out of the gate? Of we have the three wise men showing up with their gifts for Christ, and Terry Jones as the mother.
Terry Jones as the mother could be one of the best characters throughout the whole thing. It's great that we get to start with her, because then we get she's one of the consistents, right? Where you get her with all of these different characters and different times, but she's kind of the consistent, and the voice is just so absurdly annoying and ear-wrenching, and like the last thing nails on a chalkboard every time she talks. It's so funny. We will get to it, I'm sure, but she does have one of the funniest 4 seconds in the entire movie. So I love such a good opening, because from them giving her the gifts and her not caring what myrrh is, I think that's
could have gone without the myrrh.
yeah, gonna come back the gold and the frankincense. I can't keep the myrrh, and then having them steal it. It's just the whole thing. It's perfect.
I gotta just say too, that is the most ornate camel I've ever seen in my life. When they're coming down the alley, I was like, whoa, like someone's showing up the Aladdin movies and everything. Like, this is the camel to be. And I was just like, that's amazing. So
Terry Gilliam, man, that design, baby.
Probably just got that off of George's estate.
And then I just love how like myrrh was referred to as a bomb potentially. And I just was just chuckling about that too. The whole parody of the situation with them running back in at the end and snatching their gifts up. It's great.
Yep.
Well, what sign is he? One of my favorite lines of this. Well, he's the son of God.
And then she goes, are all Sagittarius is the son of God? Because that'd be hard to deal with. There'd be an awful lot of them. That's a lot of them. So good. Oh man.
Such a great opening to this. Obviously, when they come back and steal all their gifts right back and then go back to the actual birth of Christ. It's perfect. I mean, it's a great opening to this movie. There again, I think both bookends to the end, like the death of Christ, Brian, the birth of Brian, perfect, just bookends to this movie. And I mean, like we said at the top, they never make fun of Jesus. And I think this is right where you get that right away. They're treating the birth of Christ himself with a ton of respect while making fun of the three wise men showing up to the manger next door with the wrong baby. And then they do the Sermon on the Mount, which is one of my favorite scenes in this movie. Is just the fact that the jokes almost feel like they write themselves in this movie, because Jesus is giving his Sermon on the Mount and someone in the back just goes, "Speak up!"
It's so funny, just churches today spending like millions and millions of dollars to amplify the sound. Well, you can't do that back then. So it would be just like most of the people being like, what did he say? Well, he said this. I think he said this. Well, I guess that sounds good. I don't know. The whole thing, making it back to the back to the end people, you could do it. That's the genius too. Is, you have all of these people in the very, very back of Jesus giving a very, very important talk, and he's gaining followers. The very last people can't hear them. So you could do it all about what they're not hearing, which they do. But the actual funny stuff is because he says he has a big nose. And then it's like playing on this Jewish trope that Jewish people have big noses. So then everybody has big nose and they're calling everybody back and forth. And it is just, clearly in today's climate, you could never do this scene. You could never do this movie at all. But thank God we had these at a time when you could, push the boundaries and realize that you can make fun and poke fun in these ways that are like so hilariously good and so well done execution wise.
I appreciated the nod too to, I think they're recognizing cheesemakers. Like, well, what the heck do they have to do with anything?
It's just a metaphor for all dairy makers.
Yeah, that's where the first satire of how religion is interpreted is from that line that you just mentioned, because how it all comes through is, this whole thing is a satire on religion, but everything is, in religion, it's how you take it and what the story and what the meaning behind it is. And that's the first line where it's like, yes, I know the actual meaning. My meaning is the correct meaning. Your meanings are not correct. And it's not dairy. It's all dairy people, not just cheesemakers. Okay. And it's like, oh my God, I thought it's just genius level writing and satire that still to this day is like, only maybe South Park can even come close to the same level that the Pythons have.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite lines is from this scene. It's just, he said, "Blessed are the meek." All the meek. Good for them. They've had a hell of a time.
It's just too good.
It is. Oh God, I love the opening. You know, with him, I mean, the introduction of Brian into this movie with him, you know, being distracted for being Jesus Christ, and let's jump into, I think, one of the biggest running jokes of this movie, the People's Front of Judea, the Judean People's Front.
Oh man,
so good. I love the Roman Colosseum, just the fact that it says, you know, child's opening matinee. Just body parts sprawled all over the place.
I do like the fact that we got the guy who's going out and he's cleaning up all the body parts, doing all that, and you even hear in the background, like, you know, when the next show is going to be, and they're announcing everything like that. But he goes to try to take the ring off of the dismembered arm, and he can't get off, so he just stuffs the whole arm into his. I'm taking this with me. I don't care if I got to take the whole thing with me.
Too good.
Again, in total Python fashion, they don't spare who they're making fun of. Going in making fun of Roman gladiators, and having their gladiator fight is just a dude running in a circle, tiring out.
For the gladiator has a cardiac arrest.
Yeah, until he has a cardiac arrest and just dies.
And then even better that, like, no one in the audience except for the royals are even, like, barely paying attention. The United People's Front of Judea, or Judea's People Front, are so funny during this time, because it's like just saying, you know, it's like, oh, there's only one people we hate more than the Romans, and then it's like the other group that are exactly like them. So it's just so classic, like Catholicism being like, well, we're the real Christianity, and Baptists being like, well, we actually are, and Lutherans being like, well, okay, but I think we actually have it figured out. And then, like, all denominations be like, well, we accept everybody. You know, it's just like already not saying those specific denominations, but just putting it out there, putting that, you know, that one layer of what really they're saying is the perfect Python fashion for genius comedy. When then the one guy who changes his, which is so 2021, changes his you know, his gender right there in front of us, and all of his friends accept him and immediately accept her and immediately start calling her. I love that. It's like Python once again making fun of satire religion and way ahead of their time, staying woke. So I thought that was really cool. But then how then she doesn't even remember the name of their group, and then it could have been the other one.
It's only one group I hate more. It's the Judean People's Front.
Wait, that's us.
That's so good. Then they point to the solo guys, like, what happened to them? He's there, right over there. It's one guy who just, like, looks over, like, huh?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that the Pythons can just totally ride a balance on, especially in such a touchy subject matter for this movie, is that, again, they're not making fun of religion, but they're not making fun of like Jesus or his sayings, but they're making fun of every group that has followed him and misinterpreted what he is saying.
Exactly.
And having three groups that have the same name and same goals of what they're trying to do.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. I mean, and then framing that conversation should have just been a conversation, but it's the Monty Python way of putting that into the Colosseum, tying these two things together. Mm-hmm. So you have the dichotomy of them talking about religion and what is best for their culture and around them, at the same time as they just have arms and legs being picked up and meat of people. It's like, you know, man, you're way far off on getting things together here anyways. So good.
I just love the fact Brian wants to join the People's Front of Judea, and they're like, well, how much do you hate the Romans? Well, I really hate them.
Well, all right, you're in. He's in. Yeah, you're in with us now. At first, because they wouldn't let him in either. So good.
One of the jokes that comes up next is when he's writing, get out Romans and Romans leave, is a total British humor that kind of goes over our heads a little bit, but you still on a certain level understand what they're going for. And that he is basically given a writing lesson by the Romans on how to write Romans get out.
I think this is the sketch where a lot of the Pythons can be intertwined, but then, I mean, Cleese just really takes the helm here as the Roman. It's so good. when he actually grabs the paintbrush and then starts Xing out his bad grammar and telling him what do you want to do? What are they? What is the predicate? And all of that. It's so good. It's the way he's still standing so tall and at attention, holding that brush so quickly when, like, you know, you think, I mean, the whole part of the sketch is like, you think he's going to come and then murder this guy right away for blasphemy. Not the case at all. It's so funny.
Oh, I love just the way that Cleese he just owns the character, and you know, you really he's asserting his power while you realize he's asserting his, you know, ignorance to what exactly this guy is actually trying to do. And I think he pulls it off great.
Yeah, what's the Python? Not Eric Idle, not Cleese, but
Michael Palin.
Michael Palin. I think him and when I was growing up loving the Monty Python, he's my favorite on screen, and then Terry Gilliam's my favorite for set design and stuff, because like when he's that guy who's like comes and jumping around wanting like the coin, like that character, it's so
the former leper.
Yeah, I lost about 10 years ago. It's so good.
Don't you want to be a leper again?
His facial, I mean, while they're always so good at facial, you know, I mean, like the early Jim Carrey, I'm sure, just studied these guys for exactly how to react emotionally and convey your facial. You know, it's like, I love it so much. And Palin, I think he's my favorite. I think now watching it 10 years later, it was definitely weird where I do think Eric Idle, is that his name, right? I think he actually did shine a little bit more as the funniest person in this movie, but it was so good to see everybody, of course. But yeah, this scene is just so good. I mean, yeah,
I think
it's very British.
The thing that really stood out to me about this scene was the first part was funny, but as he's working through the night, I kept, like, I don't know why, but I keep thinking of like the Bart Simpson writing on the chalkboard over and over again kind of punishment. And then at the end, how the guards are like, "Are you done yet? Oh, great. Okay, cool. We're going to go ahead and end our shift now." Okay, yeah, no problem. And then other Romans come up like, "Dude, what are you doing to our building?" And I just love that inconsistency. Like they played it up so well about how, you know, night shift is not on the same page as day shift. I just love that mentality so much. So
or the fact the entire wall is just been graffitied.
Yeah. It is wonderful. Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, John Cleese feels like the MVP of this movie, but then I'm like, no, Michael Palin's really good, but then this movie doesn't work with Graham Chapman, you know, without Graham Chapman being Brian, the lead, but then you also have Eric Idle sprinkled in throughout here, and then Terry Jones as the mom, you know. Everyone feels like they totally work in what they're supposed to be doing here. Like, I know John Cleese wanted to be Brian because he always felt like he should be, like, leading man, and then literally everybody else in the group is like, no, you need to play the straight man against Graham Chapman and Michael Palin in these scenes. Like, you need to be, and I think that's obviously the best choice, because that's what John Cleese does so good in this movie. He is so great at playing the straight character in pretty much every sketch he's in this movie. I mean, one we've missed that I want to go back to is the stoning scene, where he is so good in that movie, or in that scene. It is crazy how funny that scene is. And I love that it's the Pythons, dudes, playing women, pretending to be dudes.
It is
with those beards.
With the fake beards.
And then the concession guy who sells rocks,
yes,
sells gravel, and sells fake beards for women. It's so funny. Oh my God, dude. Yeah, that is, and you're right. He does. Even though all of the other Pythons are playing, are dudes, playing girls, playing dudes, it's like Cleese steals the entire scene somehow of being the straight man, constantly with his facial features when they are high-pitched voices screaming and he looking up, you know, and then and they have to change. No, we're all men. Oh my God, no, we're all men.
Through that.
And then
he did. It's so good.
What's the blasphemy word? It's Jehovah, right? Yeah. So then I love it when, you know, he's like, you know, he's going to say it. And you're like, and if anybody says the word, and like at the end when, you know, it's clear like whoever says Jehovah's blasphemous is gonna get stoned, he's the leader, it's gonna happen, and then, you know, he just gets completely dominated, and just like he wanted to
bring a giant stone in and just bury him underneath.
The person they were going to stone is completely free, and the Roman guard has been completely smashed and is dead.
You know, one of the lines that stood out to me, and I think it also occurred towards the end of the movie too, with the crucifixion scene, was the kind of that idea of, well, how the heck can it get any worse? You know, because I think the older gentleman that was going to get stoned asked that exact question, and I love that, you know, self-realization of, well, I mean, this is already the end of the line, so what are you going to do that's worse to me than being stoned to death? You know? And I love that honesty. That's great.
So funny. Yeah, and you're right. That does go out throughout the rest of the movie as people are getting crucified. And crucified's not that bad. I mean, look at that guy down in the dungeon for so many years, and you know, I like it here. I trust the Romans and all these other things. But yeah, I didn't mean to get way ahead. Sorry.
I mean, we can jump around in this. That's fine. I love when they're walking with all the crosses and someone's in the prison. He's like, "Oh, you guys are so lucky. You're getting crucified."
And then it cuts to another concession. This is where Terry Gilliam is the genius, and all they're selling are candles in the shapes of crucifixes for like the audience to go and watch the crucifixion. It's crucifixion merch is so funny to me. I mean, it's just so funny.
You must really like Dogma.
Yeah, I did, of course.
So the scene that really stuck out to me the first time I ever watched this movie is because the first time I watched it, I vividly remember falling out of my chair because I was laughing so hard, is when Brian is running away from the Romans throughout the city, just getting chased, and he ends up in an alien spacecraft for no reason at all. The first time I watched it, and I'm not kidding, when I literally laughed out loud and fell out of my seat because I'm like, what is going on? Why is this in this movie? And it's never brought up again. He's in the spaceship for maybe 30, 40 seconds.
It felt longer than that, I'm just saying.
Spaceship crashes back into Jerusalem. He gets out and the chase continues again. There's no reason for it, and it works perfect.
Yeah, that's pure Terry Gilliam right there, and I'm sure Terry Jones was like, we're not putting this in the movie. And Terry Gilliam was like, you're putting it in, you know, because that feels like a perfect battle between those two, where Terry Jones directed this movie, and rightly so. He did the best job at directing the movie. And Terry Gilliam had art design, and on Holy Grail, they had fought, you know, because they both have artistic visions, and they both are, you know, strong in their feelings. So I'm so glad he got it in. It was so great. Speaking of why you're talking about your favorite scenes, I'll tell you my favorite scene. It does involve Brian's mom, and it's when, you know, Brian has been doing something or whatever. He comes back to his house, and then there's a Roman sitting in his house, and he is like, "Mother, what is he doing here?" And his mom's like, you shut up, Brian. You know, everything you have around here is because of these Romans and these Romans. And then, you know, it's like yada, 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 back and forth. You are a Roman, blah, blah, blah. Brian leaves. And then before the Roman leaves, the Roman gets up. And then Brian's mom's like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then just immediately drops to her knees. And then just give him a BJ. And they cut it away with like those 4 seconds of just like how transactional that section is. It's so funny, and it gets me every time. It's my very favorite movie, or part of the entire movie, is the illusion of Brian's mom giving that Roman a blowjob.
I just love the big vase of roses he has to. It's so big.
You can't, you know, they don't have a flower shop. You got to have actual pottery. Yeah. I love it, man. It's just like everything about that whole scene, the talk, everything. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, since we're talking about Brian's mom, let's continue with that. I think, like, I love, okay, so there's a pseudo love story kind of underneath the surface here. I think is supposed to be Jesus and Mary, you know, Mary Magdalene, and their weird relationship in terms of Bible study, but this is very explicit in what they are going for with Brian and this woman. I do love the scene where Brian and her hook up, and he's trying to hide her from Terry Jones, the mom. Terry Jones, who are all those people outside? And I mean, this is where we get this is where we get our much famed full frontal nudity from Graham Chapman, just letting it all out there. Why not? Yes, I think it is one of the great like it's one of the great full frontal nudity scenes of any movie for any dude. Yeah, it's also a great scene of showing, we're kind of just jumping around, but at this point, Brian is getting mistaken as a messiah. He has followers. They're obviously outside of his house now at this point, and that's why Mother Terry Jones, is so pissed off at him. He's like, "You guys need to speak for yourself." Yes, speak for us or think for ourselves.
Yeah, as we need to be individuals. We need to be individuals. It's the classic, where I bring South Park up again, but I'm sorry, but it's a, satire at their best. It's like friggin' conformists, and then like all the non-conformists are exactly the same. I mean, it's the classic story, and they did it best here in Monty Python. And so I think I love this, full frontal nudity, of course, but because he has built up being this, false messiah up into the point that he's so happy, he's post-coital, he just had a great night, he's excited to be with this girl, he's going to just go stretch out and open his blinds, and then that's when, there's 10,000 people looking at, his dropping dong. And I think that's so good. We did skip up the whole the build up to that, but it is another one of those things, just like they were talking about before with the different types of people. They point at it even more so with this one, because Brian falls into a place where he has to say something, else the Romans are going to take him. So he has to act as a religious figure. There's other religious figures giving talks. He falls accidentally into this spot, and he has to just start saying some things. It ends up snowballing so much so that he's like trying to escape a giant mob of people who are holding one of his gourds and one of his shoes, proclaiming that they are holy instruments from the Messiah. And I mean, this goes all the way, way deep into the scene we're seeing now. But that whole turn, I think there's so many funny things. John Cleese, once again, stands out in these scenes as the guy who will contradict him every single thing he says, but then when he says the opposite, contradict him again, into the point that just he believes him. He tricked himself into believing what he's saying. It's so well done.
I do enjoy the fact that, he does everything he possibly can to try to convince these people he is not who that they think he is. But every time he tries to go down that next rung and whatnot, something happens to cause the fact that they think that, oh, he definitely is. I mean, the scene right behind me with the guy in the pit who hasn't spoken for 18 years, that all of a sudden he miraculously got him to talk. And the berries and all this stuff is like everything.
Because he stepped on his foot.
Yeah.
Ow!
And all those things where he's like, I am not, but everything keeps happening. It makes you guys think I am. Just knock it off.
Yeah. I want to go back to the scene when he is like giving, like he's trying to escape the Romans, so he has to give this speech of, like all the other religious figures around him. And he starts telling this story of these two servants. And I just love Cleese's reaction. Well, what were their names?
Their names don't matter.
He doesn't know what their names are.
Okay, their names are Greg and Fred. It's like,
you said you didn't know their names.
Well, come on. It's so good.
And that's, again, right before that is another great scene where he gets the infamous gourd that you can see right behind Brian. During the great haggle scene with him and Eric Idle, where he's trying to buy a fake beard to escape the Romans. And so he asks how much they are, and he says 20. It's like, all right, just gives him 20. Well, aren't you going to haggle? All right, okay.
That is one of those ones where you make the comment about, there might be a certain Python that wants to play a certain role or whatever the case is, but that a certain role has to be played by a specific Python. Otherwise, it will not work. And I don't think that this scene would have not worked if it had not been Eric Idle being on the other end of that haggling, because I don't think the delivery would have been there if it would have been anybody but him. Because if that would have been Cleese, it wouldn't have worked.
No, I agree, because Cleese would have made it a lot about himself and played it more straight, where Idol keeps on throwing to that other like big guy that's by him that doesn't really have anything to do with it. But I just love, he's like, yeah, can you believe this guy's doing this? And then he brings it back to him, where, this other guy doesn't matter at all in the scene, right? But he's just another vendor that he keeps playing off of, and it works so well. I love it. I mean, and speaking of Eric Idle, where you just can't replace him, as the guy throughout the entire movie who just is in trouble. He's also going through, but he just constantly tells lies. So he's like, no, I'm Jesus, or no, I'm Brian. And at the end, and then like before that though, he's like, when they're giving out the crucifix, he's like, no, he said I could just leave. I'm free to go. No, I'm just playing with you. I'm supposed to die too. All right. It's so good. His delivery is A1.
Well, or the fact that he's the one that gets the other guy crucified because he gives up his cross. Here, let me help you with that. Oh, thanks. No, I'm not supposed to be here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then he's like, yeah, he really got you with that one, huh, buddy?
or the fact that then when the guy ends up getting crucified, then Eric Idle's the guy next to him giving him shit about getting crucified.
So good.
One interesting tidbit that was brought to my attention earlier today when I was watching this was in the alley scene. There was a point where I think a question was answered and then only one person spoke in the alley, where everyone turned and looked at that person. And I can't remember what the line was exactly, but there evidently a little bit of background on that. Originally, that extra was going to not be paid, and then the moment that line was said, then they were proceeded to get paid as a contributing actor or something like that, like a small wage or something.
Nice, residuals coming in.
Yeah, so that was Ken. Yeah, he just likes to talk when I'm watching movies, and I'm like, I'm trying to watch the movie, But he said I should look that up. So yeah,
dude, that's so. And I've heard of that before, where unpaid extras, they will improv, say something. They could definitely be just kicked off the movie, but if the director liked it, then they get themselves in a movie and get themselves some residuals and a credit. So that's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to jump back to the whole scene of him being mistaken for a Messiah, being Jesus, and all of his followers are running, chasing after him. And we're when he's in the pit and he steps on Terry Jones's foot, and basically all the people following are just believing everything he's saying, and there's people. The people haven't ate. They're starving. He's like, that's not my fault they haven't ate. It's like, go eat from that bush right over there. He has made a bush up here. And one of my favorite lines is him finally okay, I am the Messiah. And they're all rejoice. Yeah, he is the Messiah. What do we do next? Now fuck off. So how should we fuck off?
It's too good, man.
That is, and I think that's one of the things that Pythons do so well is that as far as explicit content for language, they never use it to just use it all the time. Modern R-rated comedies feel like they just drop F-bombs and explicit words just because. The Pythons use it in just perfect moments like that, where he just he's trying to get out of it and he finally just tells them all to F off. I'm like, well, how should we F off? I just love that's the reaction to it.
Oh yeah, it's so good. I mean, when like you said, when they're he keeps on being I'm not the Messiah, I'm not the Messiah, I'm not the Messiah. That's what a Messiah would say. He would say he's not the Messiah. Okay, fine, I am the Messiah. Yeah.
He's been taken. He's been taken up.
Yeah.
No, he's over there.
Oh, he's right over there. And then they go follow him. It's so good.
I mean, we brought him up earlier, Michael Palin. I think Michael Palin is probably my favorite Python too. And a big part of that, I think him and Cleese kind of get the majority of the big side characters in this movie. And I think he has some of the best ones here, the ones that I laugh out loud the most at. I mean, obviously the name I used for this is Biggest Dickus. and we have to bring up Biggest Dickus at some point during this because, I mean, I think that's one of the great Python sketches is just everything Biggest Dickus.
Oh, and laughing and not being able to control it, killing those. The whole scene where it's, once again, Python doing funny things, right? Because Biggest Dickus is just funny. And then having a king that is, mad because you're making, like laughing at him is another like trope. But they take it even further where it's like this king has a lisp, is completely, has no way of being on the same level mentally as any of his people around him. He's so far elitist that he has no connection to the normal people that he can't even understand Biggest Dickus. And to the point of why that my friend is called Biggest Dickus and he's a very noble man. And it's like, I love it so much so that when we do get the infamous scene of Biggest Dickus actually shows up, when it's like, I'm like, well, no way. I figured like that when you hear the sketch of Biggest Dickus, that's the end of it. And then when it cuts to like half hour later and Biggest Dickus has visited, you're like
a real person. No. And he also has a speech impediment. He has a lisp too. Tries to speak.
I would like to point out, there's a few notes that I made while watching this, and that scene of them talking about then all the guards laughing. It was like, okay, I'm making this time because I want to make sure I address this and whatnot. Is we know that Python is funny. We know they're good at what they do, and they do it the right way and whatnot. I want to know how many times they would had to have filmed that scene of Palin trying to utter these words. It's the only good usable shot. You see him almost breaking character and laughing on screen while trying to yell at the other guard.
Aren't you so happy they left that in though, Brian?
I know. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But I'm just saying is how many scenes that they could not get through if that was the best one.
Oh, totally hundreds. I think.
Because I'm seeing because I'm thinking, like SNL type of things when you got these guys that are just trying to get through the scene, right? And you could just see his lip quiver in laughter, and I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, in that scene when he's doing it, he has to be like 1 inch away from that other guy's face. So right. It's just like that other guy's. So it would be impossible,
right?
Yeah, what did you think is funny about Dickus? Bickus?
I mean, we've talked about in the last couple of weeks Python influence, and I mean, we mentioned it in the show. South Park is basically an animated Monty Python TV series.
Exactly.
I mean, looking at one of the great 80s fantasy comedies that we've talked about before, The Princess Bride, the priest in The Princess Bride is just Pontius Pilate from this movie. It's the same joke. Yeah. They pretty much lift it from this movie and put it in that, and it works great in that as well. But I mean, that's just the Python's influence. Like, it's like we need to have something funny with our priest. Well, let's just make him Pontius Pilate from, Life of Brian and have the same speech impediment.
And it's great, and I definitely saw Princess Bride first, so that when this does come in, you're like, oh man, yeah, so good.
I want to keep on the Michael Palin train because when they're giving out the crosses for the crucifixion, I love his character that he's playing. He's like, crucifixion? He's just totally playing a dude who's doing his job. Like, oh, what are you here for? He's like a secretary almost.
Totally, he's a ticket taker at a carnival, or he's the person at the flight. He's the flight person who has to check in your ticket. Except you're going to die. It's
now go through the door and swing to the and line up on the left.
1 cross per person.
I did like that bit about freedom. That was too. I thought that was a lot of fun.
No, I'm kidding. One of the great small jokes is during this is Eric Idle playing a character who has a stutter, and Terry Jones playing like this a total Terry Jones character. Like, they just give Terry the weirdest characters they can because he pulls them off every time. He's just talking like with a big grunt in his voice, and when they're finally by themselves, like, oh yeah, would you just talking normal? It's such a great little joke to throw in there after the scene.
And speaking of influence, I mean, how many times have you seen that, like in cartoons and a billion other things now, where it's like these people are one thing when they're around everybody, and then when you cut to them, that it's like a completely different thing, and that's the joke. And this has got to be the origin of it. Even though I have seen this movie a bunch of times, I totally actually forgot this was coming. So when they introduce them at like the middle of the movie, then they cut back to these characters again another time, and then they cut to them at the end. They wait for that third time to do the joke, so then it actually hits. 3 times is harder. It's great directing and writing.
All right, I think we're kind of leaning towards the climax of Life of Brian, the crucifixion of Brian. Again, this leads to, like we said, the biggest dickus giving his great speech and having 500, 1,000 people just laughing at everything Pontius Pilate and biggest dickus are saying is incredible. I love that. But yeah, when we get to the crucifixion, this is where the great Pythons playing every character trope comes in great, because the Pythons entering a scene, doing their spiel, leaving, and then the Pythons come in passing the Pythons. It's so great.
Yeah, it is. Because now it is the convergence of kind of all of our groups that we've been meeting throughout the movie. And so they all the guards have to be there, the people have to be there, the prisoners have to be there, and it is absolutely perfect, though, because first when it cuts to, it's really funny, and then Clee says a bunch of S names, and then biggest dickus has an S speech impediment and then has to say all the S names. It goes like one step further. They cut through another scene. When they cut back, all of the people are laying on the ground. It's so absurd. And that's Monty Python is a perfect absurd comedy, so it lays in straight. But then when we actually do get to they're on the cross, and then the different chances that Brian basically has for people to rescue him, and then the failings, and them nobody wanting to rescue Brian when he's up on the crucifix is just too much. And then the different types of people being like, no, I don't want to be crucified near these people. I only want to be crucified near the people who are like me.
I'm not Jewish. I need to be over here.
So absurd, because, hey, guys, you're all just going to die. It does not matter,
A couple of things, actually, I just thought of right now, randomly. It was like this train. There's so many little notes throughout this movie, but rewinding a little bit, the drill of when they're at the old man's house and, there's a knock at the door and everybody hides. Like, oh, I'm going to throw a sheet over myself, or I'm going to have, just like my ass hanging out from a basket, and they're not going to see me. And then the guards, literally, like 18 guards run in or whatever. And, I didn't find anything. But let's also give a nod to that sound effect of them moving in the house and out of the house. How funny! Like, how many pop can tabs did you have in a bag and shake that, or whatever the case is, to make sound effect? It was so ridiculous and so funny to make fun of their armor, but the fact that they also could not find anyone was just completely absurd and amazing. And then he comes back 2 seconds later and searches the place. There's one place we didn't check.
You haven't given us time to hide yet.
Yeah, so that was one thing that stood out to me. The second thing, we talked about this earlier, about all these multiple groups kind of doing the same thing but not. And so thinking about the attempt of kidnapping the wife, and I just gotta say, this movie really looks at like great things like religion and just makes a parody of it. So thinking about that floor with the beautiful artwork and the hole that they carve is right in the crotch of this poor depicted female. It's so, like, it's just a bow on top for me for this movie, and it's so symbolic. And then the two groups run into each other like, dude, this was our plan. We planned this years ago. And I thought that was so funny how they totally foiled their own plans. So those are two things that.
Speaking of the plan scenes, I love the plan when they're setting up that plan to go underground and kidnap Pilate's wife. Is what have the Romans ever done for us?
Well, besides roads.
And medicine,
irrigation.
Well, besides that,
I know by the time they get done and realize, that they're naming off like 17 things before they're like, but then what have they done for us?
And then they bring up all those things again at the end. They're like, we're down with the Romans, except for the ones that have to do with irrigation, planning, education, communication. It's so good.
I love at the end when everybody's getting crucified and all the Romans are there, and then the Judean People's Front, the one that we've been building up is the one everybody hates, shows up like they're the army. They come in, save everyone. They scare off the Romans. They get into suicide formation, just stab themselves.
Too much. And
I like the fact that the armor's built for that though, because all they had to do was just open up the one piece of the face, the chest plate.
So funny. I mean, yeah, that whole thing is good because, like, then his girlfriend could save him, but is not going to. All his group of people comes and they say, "For he's a jolly good fellow." They could just save him, but instead they make him a martyr because it will help their cause. It's too good, man. It's just too good.
One thing I didn't know about before, rewatching it this time, doing some behind the scenes stuff, is when the Judean People's Front show up at the end, they were supposed to be introduced earlier in the movie in a cut scene that even Eric Idle, who wrote the scene and performed in it, was like, okay, we have to cut this because in that they were playing a Jewish group, but this Jewish group is basically the early formation of Nazis.
Oh my God.
A Jewish person playing a Nazi. And even Eric Idle's like, yeah, we need to cut that scene. We cannot have that in the movie.
That's just perfectly
So when you look at their helmets of the Judean People's Front, it has the Star of David, but Terry Gilliam made it so it looks like a swastika is coming out of each star.
Oh my God, no way. I have to go and look at that. I don't think I've ever seen that. That's crazy. Oh man.
I'll pull it up before the end of the show here.
Heck yeah.
And then, I mean, this is, if not the greatest, one of the greatest comedy endings of all time.
Because Eric Idle got his musical.
He got his musical. I mean, this is one thing the Pythons always struggle with is, I don't even want to say struggle with it because it always works out great in the end, is they never have an ending for their skits or their movies. Like, how do we end this? So Holy Grail, they get arrested by modern day police. Here they're like, well, let's just sing a song like a Disney musical. Why not?
It's great and has been used by other comic people. I mean, it's the Judd Apatow thing after 40-Year-Old Virgin, Afternoon Delight that everybody goes into singing at the very end. They don't know how to end the movie, so you just end it, have all your cast members sing a song. And it's been stolen a few other comedies, but here's the origination point. And when I was even watching this time, I started singing along and kind of dancing to it as they're doing it. It's absolutely catchy, and it's a perfect way to close it down.
Yeah, full disclosure, I sing this song at least once a week, or at least whistle at least once a week. I love this song. It's a perfect ending. I mean, just the way they're like, okay, how do we deal with the crucifixion? Well, we just sing a very upright, cheerful song about someone's life, and one of my favorite lines out of the song is, life is a piece of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke. It's true. It's such a dour outlook on life, but yet it's so cheerful and a little optimistic in a way, just because it's a very cheerful song, and it is impossible to on a rewatch to not sing along or whistle along to it. It's one of the great movie music songs.
In this whole thing, it's like where life is messed up. Who cares? I mean, it's like it's crazy that this is 1979. This is a message that is in a top movie, but like today's internet culture and meme culture try to take the same message of the world is nothing. I'm depressed. There's no reason for going on. But, of course, at least I have Minecraft or whatever their, kind of play on it is. And it's crazy that, we're looking, whatever this is, 50 years since this movie has come out. And
how old do you think I am?
The same message is 40 years since this came out, since we already know that. Since this has came out, and it is the exact same message, is still hitting with people, just in a different way. So it just shows to the genius of this movie.
Yeah, I have told my friends, my family, my fiance, there's only one song that is playing at my funeral when I die. I don't want anyone sad, but I want Eric Idle singing me out.
That's amazing.
It's the only way.
Legend.
All right, I am going to share my screen. I got to show you guys this Judean People's Front logo. We might get taken off YouTube.
Oh yeah, that is crazy. They add like hooks to it. To each one. Oh man, that's crazy.
Wow.
I watched that scene after because I had never seen it before. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a reason they cut that from the movie.
That's okay.
That a boy pythons.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. We're gonna go again. I think we've done this for all two movies we covered beforehand, but quickly round the horn. Everybody, give your favorite scene and final thoughts on the film. I'll throw it off to John first. What was your favorite scene from Life of Brian?
Ooh, Lordy. Now that we talked about that Stonian scene, that one to me was really funny. Just the act of selling rocks is so asinine and funny to me. Making money, schemes like that, paired with the acting surrounding males pretending to be females, pretending to be males with beards on it, was just brilliant. And who threw it? Like the eagerness to throw stones, and just how they made it just comical. Everything about that scene I thought really shined for me. So I'd give it to that one.
Excellent. I'll go next as we'll stay in this order. Once again, my favorite scene is the Brian's mom giving a BJ scene, and or tied with full frontal male nudity. But I just think
I think Tom has a theme.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I mean, yeah, if you guys watch Comic Book Look, this comes as no surprise to anyone. I love highbrow. I'm a lowbrow person, though. I love highbrow things. I love highbrow writing and art, but I'm a lowbrow person. And so I just, I love the style that British humor conveys that so well. We are highbrow, we are elitist, and I have just farted, that kind of humor that I can still get behind. So overall, I love this movie. As I said, thank you guys so much for having us on here for Life of Brian, and allowing us to do this movie. I am super excited to watch it again after not watching it for such a long time, that it really does. I'm very happy that it holds up 100%. I know that I'm sure there's some parts that in the 2020 climate are a little bit crazy, just with homophobia and racism and, different things like that I'm not into, but I still, of course, appreciate that people can push limits and everything doesn't have to be PC to the max. Final thoughts. Absolutely love this movie. Thank you guys for having us on and going through it again.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll quickly go. My favorite scene, I think, is just one of the greatest scenes of any movie, is Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. As far as comedy goes, this time it is the scene that's right behind Brian, like I said, where he tells everybody to F off, and the response is, how shall we F off? This time, that line just stuck out to me and had me rolling this time around. So, and like I said, the first time I watched it, that alien scene had me literally on the ground rolling because it was so funny. And like I said, beginning of this discussion, I think it's one of the greatest comedies ever made. This is pure masterwork from the Pythons, and yeah, highly recommend if you have not. If people have only watched, Holy Grail, perfect next step. You might be offended. I don't know. That depends on your religious upbringing, your own thoughts and opinions. But yeah, I think this is one of the great comedies ever.
Yeah. In terms of me, for the sake of probably favorite scene, obviously, I kind of went into Python completely blind until we started this series. Pretty much the only thing I had underneath my belt was Holy Grail, which is 95% of people. But knowing the caliber of their humor, their writing, their style, and everything like that, the fact that I have a scene where you have Michael Palin almost breaking character because he can't keep a straight face during the biggest dickest scene, I'm sorry, for me, takes the entire movie, just because that tells me how much fun they were having making this movie. And if that's your best shot, that makes the film.
And they'll tell you that too. This is the height of Pythons being Pythons and actually loving what they're doing. And they'll all six of the guys, four of them left, would say that Life of Brian is the peak of Python. And Yeah, I mean, one more thing I will add before we kind of wrap up and go into our plugs and stuff. If you have not watched the kind of talk show that John Cleese and Michael Palin were on, it is from when this movie is, coming out. It is from Friday night, Saturday morning. Just type that in on YouTube, you'll find it. But basically, they're going. It's Cleese and Palin going up against two religious figures discussing Python.
Ooh.
And it is crazy. It's a crazy hour-long watch. Go check it out if you haven't. And it's one of the most infamous kind of us versus them as a movie is coming out and getting released. So it's a great watch and a great behind-the-scenes look on Life of Brian. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up. Let people know where they can find all four of us here. If you want to find Backlot and anything that we do, you can follow us on backlot605.com. That is the most the easiest place to find us. That is the hub for everything that we do. You can also subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon, and on YouTube as well. And if you would like, you can join us on Patreon for even more bonus content. We just threw up a little poll of what we would like, for what everybody would like us to do in the month of February. I think we have a front runner, but we'll wait to announce that until we are 100% certain on that. But that is patreon.com/backlot605. Check us out there. Thanks to our patrons, Logan, Blake, Andy, Derek, Lou, Corey, Darren. Thank you guys all so much for being patrons and helping out the show. Brian, where can they find us on social media?
Oh, we try to make it really easy for everybody. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it's all Backlot605. We also have the South Dakota Film Community Group on Facebook to allow everybody just to have an open discussion about film, what we like, what's going on, what's being released, anything and everything. So definitely check us out there.
All right, Tom, John, where can they find you guys and Comic Book Look?
Well, Comic Book Look, YouTube, that's where we started, 2011 or 2000, I think is when we started. So yeah, like I said, been on YouTube for 10 years, but now we come on Facebook on the Rainbow account coming at you live. So if you just follow Rainbow Cards and Comics, every Wednesday, new comics come out. Every Wednesday night, me and John get together and talk about them. You can find me on Instagram at Tom Stew Divine. That's TOMSTEW Divine, DEVINE. Also on Twitter at Tom Stew Divine, and then add a Comic Book Look on Twitter and the other ones as well. And then Johnny is also he's going to lay you down with a bunch of different places that you can find him and what his sign is. But he always forgets to tell people that he makes music, and he has like amazing full albums that you can get on Bandcamp and some other different really cool places. So definitely check out on John Valentine, John on Demand, some really cool stuff that he's put out throughout the years. Okay, go ahead, John.
Well, thank you. So yes, I am at John on Demand on Twitter, you guys. If you guys do want to keep in touch with us and continue that conversation, we do have our Comic Book Look community on Facebook. It's a lot of fun, very casual environment. We love talking everything media, so definitely welcome there to join us. And then also just our group at Sign a Comic Book Look, just the group account on Twitter too. And yes, musically wise, if you do want to check me out, feel free. iTunes, you can search John on Demand, The Reconstruction. I have a whole album that I put out just for the fun of it. And it's just a cool time right now to be a nerd. That's what we say on our book, on our show all the time. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a blast. We'll have to have you definitely back on at some point. We have plans for some comic book movie stuff down the road, and I think it'd be very interesting to. And I know you guys know the Wednesday Comics boys too, so I kind of want to throw you guys into the ring with each other. I mean, we're talking about some Godzilla and Kong in a few months, duking it out. We'll put the two 605 comic book titans head to head, so that would be a lot of fun. But we got to plug two more things and we'll get ourselves the hell out of here. We do have this coming up next week, or this upcoming week, the Schmuckies Movie Awards. This is our movie awards. It is on live YouTube and Facebook, January 23rd, 7 p.m., our movie awards show. Please go check it out. We do have a full event page up on our website and on Facebook as well for more information. Next week, though, we are finishing Monty Python month with the Python's final film. They are going to tell us the meaning of life with Monty Python's The Meaning of Life next week, rounding out Python month. Brian, you have no idea what you're in for this.
Nope.
All I will say,
and I will honestly say that going into this, being that I have never seen any of these, I purposely going in blind. I'm not looking anything up because I want to go completely raw and know exactly that I will get an unfiltered reaction to these.
all I will say is, Brian, every sperm is sacred.
Raw dog, baby.
Until next time, this has been the Backlot 605 podcast. Thank you again to John and Tom. Thank you guys for joining us on the show. For Brian Mensing, I'm Casey, biggest dickest Kelderman, and we'll see you guys next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.